Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Welcome to episode 305 of the show. Hey, I haven't been doing introductions lately on the interview portions, but I'm kind of under the gun time-wise. I wanted to make sure and remind you all that coming up this weekend, July 17th and 18th, I will be at the Books and Brews, a grown-up book fair in Hermann, Missouri. That is happening this weekend. It looks to be a lot of fun, and I know special tickets for the event have been sold out, but I think they said there will be other tickets at the door. So if you can make it by, make sure you check the links in the show notes, and I hope to see you there. Just another side note, look for a special announcement from me about Bandit Born, the prequel to my Bandit series, later this week as well. Meanwhile, in today's episode, we're speaking with Susan Rosenbluth, talking about her debut book, Blurred Vision. It is a psychological thriller, and it is one heck of a book. During this interview, I had such a fun time speaking with her and learning more about her past as she is the founder and editor of the Jewish Voice and Opinion magazine, how the 30 plus years of existence of that magazine has influenced her storytelling today, and how that influenced this, particularly this book, the series, and lots of great information, some wonderful advice throughout the interview that she just kind of peppers in from time to time. You're not going to believe it. This is so great. And then at the end of it, of course, I do my usual would you rather question that I picked one out that I didn't know why I picked it, but it's amazing how it worked out for this interview. And her answer leads us into a whole, just a fascinating discussion that she takes us on this journey for her answer. So without further ado, how about we just go ahead and hop on over to that interview with Susan Rosenbluth, coming right up. Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Welcome back. Hey, this week I have a very special guest. I am speaking with Susan Rosenbluth, author, editor, and grandma. She is the founder and editor of the Jewish Voice and Opinion, an online magazine with a mission to present news and feature articles not generally available elsewhere in Jewish or scholar media. Blurred Visions is her debut novel as a psychological thriller that we're going to hear all about today. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the show, Susan Rosenbluth. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Jason. I'm so glad to be here. And I'm sorry people couldn't have heard us talking before, because you're fascinating.
You're very generous. You must have gotten the check I sent in the mail.
Nope, I'm very truthful.
Well, thank you. I've been having a delightful time speaking to you ahead of time. It almost made me forget there, but I did forget for a long time. Like, oh my gosh, we should be interviewing this or recording this. Oh my goodness. And we let's see here. So you have just a wealth of information behind this historical magazine that you put together, that you founded. So let's start with that.
I did. For many years, I worked with what I like to call the secular Jewish media. I knew I wanted to work. I'm very much a part of the Jewish community. And what I like about writing for the Jewish community is that we have so many others who find us interesting, which is great, which means we have lots and lots of Christian friends. We have Muslim readers. They're reading about the way our slant is on the take on the news, because they're interested in it. Sometimes the jokes we have, no Jews, no news. We represent like 2% of the American population. And if you turn on your television, you might think we were 98%, because the minute they want to talk about a story, or rather, we're in the middle of it. And a lot of people were very interested in what it is that Jews say to each other. So the Jewish Voice and Opinion is a publication that viewed the news from a politically conservative perspective. That's not to say cuckoo and crazy. It mainstream politically conservative. And people very often would ask me, well, how come you don't give every point of view? And I would say to them, if I thought the Jewish Voice and Opinion were the only publication you were reading, I'd have to give you every point of view and every perspective and everything there was. But I know you're reading other things. So what our publication is the other side, the side you probably are not getting. I have enough faith in you that you can read both sides and you'll make up your own mind about what makes sense to you. Great teacher of mine once said, never underestimate your audience's intelligence. Don't ever overestimate your audience's information. My job is I love teaching. I was a teacher for many years. I saw running a publication as a way to make my classroom bigger. Instead of reaching 30 kids, the Jewish Voice and Opinion goes to well over 20,000 households, and says, this is a perspective. I think it's an important one. I think you should know about it. Now you go out and you decide what makes sense to you and what's right for you.
Very nice. Very nice. And I was reading that you did this as a magazine, for like an actual magazine, for 28
Oh,
years
yes.
before
I
going
did it.
online.
It's interesting. Did it through COVID, just about when COVID started, and what I consider to be a success. And the success is that a group came into the area here in New Jersey, where I'm based, and wanted to run what I was doing pretty much, but to do it as a weekly, and asked me to go with them. And I said, at this point, I had children and grandchildren, and we knew we were going to have great grandchildren. And I said, you know what? I don't want to put together a weekly. Thank you very much. A monthly was just fine. I do write for them. I do advise them. I do give them, thank goodness they're interested in, because the Jewish Voice and Opinion is now well over 35 years, and we've put it online, which is great. But I like to think that someone standing on my shoulders has taken the ball forward, and I'm really quite proud of that, and is very, very successful. So I think it's great.
Oh,
And doing the same sort of thing, taking perspective on the news, on features, certainly even in the book I've written, and looking at it, I like to think through a religious perspective, which I think it's fair to say would be a politically conservative perspective. And it's not the only one out there. No one would ever claim that this is the truth. Read it, read everything else, decide what works for you.
Very good. Very well said. I like that. And I'm thrilled for you that the magazine has done so well, and that you've been able to sort of hand it off and see it go to new heights. That's amazing.
It was very, very, very gratifying. And it also gave me a chance to work on Blurred Vision. Blurred Vision was inspired actually by articles that I had done for the Jewish Voice and Opinion, a series, and on a phenomenon that kind of blew my mind. It started even before I opened the Jewish Voice and Opinion. I was working for what I call a secular Jewish newspaper, which was a newspaper that didn't take any particular point of view religiously. And the publisher asked me to interview a family. There's a local family here in Teaneck, New Jersey. nice family. Father was a physician, mother played mahjong. They had 3 children, each, like in many Jewish families, each one brighter than the next. And the real creme de la creme was their third, who had graduated first in his class from high school, done extremely well on SATs. This was in the mid 1980s. Got himself accepted to an Ivy League school, went, and the parents knew when they spoke to him in September, and I guess maybe going into October, that that their son wasn't happy, was having a kind of a hard time adjusting. For the first time, he wasn't the best and the brightest. They were all the best and the brightest. As he told me later on, probably one of his worst problems was that the young lady he was interested in was not reciprocating. She won't date me,
Oh.
and she wouldn't. Um, this was a family that certainly identified as Jewish, but was not religious in any way. And the young man himself was, was floundering. There was no, the school gave him structure, but there was no structure outside of classes. His roommate was a stranger. He was having problems. And by Thanksgiving, he was gone, disappeared.
Oh.
Parents went to the school. There was no sign of foul play. His roommate said, yeah, he must have gone out, and I didn't know, really didn't know.
Mm.
His teachers didn't know. There were no other adults. It was a college. No other adults were keeping track. What the police finally said to the parents was, he's over 18. If he wants to disappear himself, he has the right to do that. Well, his parents disagreed. No, he doesn't. And what they did was what I think almost any of us would have done. They hired a private investigator, and they did find him.
Oh, good.
They found him out in San Francisco. He had joined the Moonies. Do you remember them? The Moonies were a cult. Their real title was the Unification Church. It was the leader was a rotund South Korean businessman named Sun Myung Moon, which is why they were called Moonies. Yeah. And he had convinced literally almost 1 million people around the world, maybe more, that he was the second coming.
Wow.
And these, especially young people, believed it. There are all kinds of luring techniques that cults use. Like any good people readers, they learn to smell out their targets. They can just know when someone is vulnerable. We all have times in our lives when we are vulnerable, when things aren't working, when rejections come in, when she won't date me, and they compound to form could call you unhappy, but you're vulnerable. And for someone to come in and say, no one understands you, we do. They don't know how terrific you are. They don't see all of your inner virtues. You are, anybody who doesn't want to date you is out of her mind. Anybody who doesn't see your potential, what you can achieve. And the best way for you to do this is with our group, because we're going to give you the platform to do this on. You're going to find your potential with us. You don't have to do it in your classroom. You don't have to do it with teachers who don't recognize how good you are, with your parents who are expecting something that is completely at odds with who you are. It's a technique called love bombing.
Okay.
And it's very successful at those moments. At a time when you're feeling pretty good, you'd look at them and say, you're crazy. I mean, it wouldn't mean anything. But not when you're feeling that you got to do something.
Yeah.
not when you're feeling that the world is conspiring against you. Then all of a sudden, these allies become important, as they did to this young man from Teaneck. Very bright, very idealistic. He was not just going to be a regular member. He was soon running their vegetarian restaurant out in San Francisco. The Moonies, like many of these other cults, were extremely litigious. If parents tried to contact their kids to try to bring them home, to try to help them, the Moonies would literally follow them. They would not allow parents to kidnap their kids. The Moonies would call the police. They would institute lawsuits against parents. They devastated some parents financially. And parents who wanted to take their kids out of the cult were the enemies. Kids were taught in this cult that it was okay to lie, lying because it was for the better good, the greater good. If you're going after, like all cults depend on members and money. Members, the more members you bring in, the more fundraising can go on. The more fundraising, the more members. So they work in tandem.
Yeah.
And many of these young people were told, if you can get people to donate money, buy something from us, you're not defrauding them. You're selling them a ticket to heaven.
Oh my.
In fact, there's a marvelous, there was a wonderful book written about people who got caught up in the Moonies called Moonwebs, and because of the Moonies, and a very fine movie was made of it called Ticket to Heaven. And I think that's still available on YouTube or whatever. Well worth watching, because they do show some of the techniques, and people were astounded. Well, anyway, I met this family when they had already been able to bring their son home, and listening to them, he couldn't explain to me why he wanted to go with them, but he told me the truth is he missed it terribly. He missed that feeling of belonging to something bigger than you are. They liked belonging to something bigger than he was, something that was all encompassing, all engulfing. That made you feel that you were able to do something, that you could do it with other people and achieve something tremendous. And he missed it. He really did. Now, I'm not sure whatever happened to him, but I started wondering how many other people felt the same way. And so what I did was I started investigating. I started trying to talk to some people who were in cults and were out of cults. And one of the things that I was astounded by was the number of Jewish young people who were caught up in this. Jews represent 2% of the American population. That's it. A lot of people, we make a lot of noise, but that's all it is. And somehow or other, we were 30, some people say maybe even hitting 40% of the Moonies. We were tremendous numbers of groups like Children of God. Scientology was able to build a center in Israel. It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Well, I did find out some things. One of it was that they didn't seem to work particularly on kids who were brought up with a faith. Jews, Christians. If kids were brought up with something to fall back on in those times that they were vulnerable, they didn't necessarily go for this, or at least certainly not in any of the numbers that we found. It was once explained to me that all of us are human beings, are hardwired for the spiritual. There has never been a human community that isn't that doesn't have its spiritual component. When cavemen were drawing on the walls on those caves, they were not just trying to duplicate or imitate nature. They were beseeching someone to let the hunt continue, to let them get what they needed. They were beseeching something beyond themselves, bigger than themselves. And that seems to be something that, as I said, all human beings seem to be hardwired for. Not all the time, and not everyone, but as a group, as a species, whether we're talking about totem poles, churches, cathedrals, they are part and parcel of the human condition. Some people like to call it the God hole. The God hole that is something that needs to be filled with something nurturing. Some people, if you are religious, you might call it truth, but certainly something that I would say is good. And if you fill it with that, you stand a pretty good chance, especially if you're part of a faith-based group, when at those times when you are vulnerable, to have other people around you. In college, grown-ups who are going to see you. We're talking about Orthodox Jews, by definition, they're going to come together for a Friday night dinner, for a Saturday afternoon lunch. And there are going to be grown-ups around who can see if something is wrong. But when you don't have that, and you're out on your own, and that God hole needs something. One rabbi once equated it in the Bible. There's a story when Joseph is thrown into the pit. His brothers throw him into the pit when he's sold into slavery. The scripture says the pit was empty and it had no water, which sounds like a redundancy. Now, if it was empty, of course it had no water. Well, give a sentence like that to the rabbis of the Talmud, and boy, they can do very important things with it. What they came up with is they said it was empty only of water. Water became the symbol, certainly in Jewish tradition, of Jewish faith, of God. In Christian tradition, it's the emblem, the symbol of Jesus. It's the symbol of the truth of the faith. When there is no water, the rabbis tell us, that void won't stay empty. Into it creep scorpions, snakes, and scorpions, because there's a void and they will creep in there. And I think snakes and scorpions is as good a metaphor as I've ever heard for some of the most destructive cults that have run rampant in this country. Something is going to fill that void, and it's nothing good.
I was gonna say, and it's nothing good for sure. Oh my goodness.
And that's what I wrote about.
Okay, yeah, and that's book one of your series, the Dark Cult Survivor series, Blurred Vision is book one. That's an amazing story. What was your greatest challenge of writing this book?
Staying true to the stories that I had picked up, that I had learned from survivors, from their families, from law enforcement that got involved with some of these groups and was called upon to help rescue some kids. I wanted to stay true to it, and I didn't want to be shocking, and I didn't want to have it be, oh, come on, who would believe that? So I thought that was a challenge. There is violence in it because child abuse was part and parcel of all of these groups. Children who were born into them. It was one thing for a 22-year-old to decide to go and join them. The Moonies married people together. Some young moon would say, you're in Australia and you're a follower of mine in New Jersey. And he would I think he rented out Yankee Stadium, introduced people, and 5 minutes later they were married.
Oh.
and they had children. And these children were brought up in the cult. It's often been said that one man's cult is another man's religion. There
Mm.
are differences. Most mainstream religions don't try to separate you from your family.
Mhm.
They may want you to go and try to make your family more religious, but they don't tell you to cut off ties with your family.
Right.
The cults do. The cults must tell you to cut off ties with your family. And that's a biggie. That's a major, major distinction. However, some of our civil liberties union people were convinced that any efforts made to get rid of the cults or to break their power was an infringement of civil rights.
Mm.
In the 1980s, a state senator in New Jersey, Matty Feldman, he should rest in peace, lovely man, Matty put in a bill that said that when there is suspicion that a family member is a part of a destructive cult, close family members, parents, in some cases children, siblings, should have the right to have custody of the individual for a period of 30 days to see whether the individual can come back to his or her normal life, or whether just wants to go back to the cult. And the understanding was they had the right to, but for 30 days. The bill was fought tooth and nail by the American Civil Liberties Union, which was successful. And I was in the courtroom when this argument was made. They talked about a cult that they said was called Tenevnock. Tenevnock? Well, the Civil Liberties Union attorney said Tenevnock takes young women. They come into they stay in a home. They live together. Their hair is cut. They sleep on hard pallets. All of their worldly possessions are given to the leader, whom they call mother, and she can do whatever she wants. She can tell them to do whatever she wants them to do, and they are duty bound to obey her. And this is Tenevnock. And the attorney looked at the judge who was hearing the case and said, "Your Honor, what do you think of Tenevnock?" He said, "I think it's terrible." Tenevnock was convent spelled backwards. That one man's cult is another man's religion.
Yeah.
And what is the difference? There are differences. Sometimes I think it's almost pornography. You know, I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it. And it became the argument. The ACLU was successful, and the bill was not passed. The bill was declared unconstitutional. And so you have the situation where children were born into the cults. And what is our responsibility as a society to those children? They don't have to go to school. They can be taught the faith of the cult. And I was writing about that issue. I had not met the kid who fell into that until 1987. In 1987, I was working for the Bergen Jewish News, which was another secular Jewish paper. And I got a call from a friend of mine who was doing a story on Covenant House. Covenant House is a wonderful organization that helps runaway kids or who need help right outside Port Authority. In 1987, Port Authority was not a place you wanted to go. Today, it looks like a shopping mall. It's beautiful. It's great. Nice little restaurants and shops. In 1987, it was a drug-infested place that you ran into to get your bus and ran out of to get back onto the street where you could go. And she asked me to come and meet her at Port Authority, a friend of mine. And I did. And she said, yes, I did, because she was very insistent. When I got there, she was standing with a kid. I thought he may be 14, maybe 15. I didn't think he was 16 yet. He looked very young.
Yeah.
And he was living in Port Authority, he told me. He was able to eat because he was he was acting as a male prostitute. That's how he was surviving in Port Authority. He told me that he had run away from a cult called Children of God. Children of God was horrific. Children of God was a cult that would tell all the young women who came, your bodies do not belong to you. Your bodies belong to the leader of the cult. And you are, just as Jesus sent out fishermen to save men's souls, you will become flirty fishes for us to bring members and money. So essentially turning these young girls into prostitutes for the cult. And he had run away from that. Well, he told me he knew his mother was Jewish. He left her at the cult. And he said he knew that meant he was too. And I said, I looked at my friend and I said, yes, I would like very much to interview you. And he was perfectly willing, but he said he wanted only one thing. I said, what's that? He said, I'd really like a kosher meal. You could have blown me over with a feather. He's selling his body in Port Authority and he wants a kosher meal. Yes, I'll take you for a kosher meal. So I took him to Loose Eagles, which was a kosher restaurant not too far from Port Authority. And while we were eating and I was scribbling my notes, I told him, I said, you don't have to stay out here on the streets. I know people who would not only give you a kosher home, they'd consider a privilege to do so. Would you like to come with me? Well, he said he wanted to think about it. I said, that's reasonable. And we arranged to meet the next day, just where we had met at the information booth in Port Authority. He never showed up.
No.
I did go to the police. They laughed at me. They said, do you know how many kids we have running around here? I mean, 2,000 reported crimes every year. God alone knows how many unreported. I don't know if a single word he told me was true. I really don't. I don't know whether he was just a good reader and he had found it, but I will tell you that he haunted me and he wound up one of the three protagonists in Blurred Vision.
Oh, okay. So, and I wondered about that, if this experience, if like as the series goes on, will it be the continuing story of this one cult, or is it a different cult per book?
No, it's the cult that I have in my book is a made-up one,
Okay.
Vision of the World, which is vows, and it's a composite of lots of the cults. Its leader is a
okay.
composite of many of the leaders and that I did manage to speak to. So many of them were terrific people readers. They really were very good. They could look at you and they knew things. I mean, they weren't psychic. They were good people readers. Would have made great therapists. They're just very insightful. And it worked very well as a cult leader, but they would do it for their own purposes.
That's sad. I mean, you worked with your magazine as the editor for that whole time. How was that different from writing the book, or how was the book kind of refreshing?
Well, I wrote the book after I decided that I wasn't going to keep doing the magazine as a monthly, that we put it online, which took care of the biggest issue, as you know, is deadlines. So all of a sudden it was like, I don't have a deadline. We put up stories when they worked, sent them out. I'm a member of the American Jewish Press Association, which is about there's almost 50 members. Every state has at least one Jewish newspaper. Some of them have more. And that's the American Jewish Press Association. A lot of my work has appeared in publications throughout the country in Canada through the AJPA. And when I looked at some of the things I wanted to do, I mean, my notes had notes on quotes, it was like, and I said, I really want to write this book. I sort of knew the story I wanted to tell. It was, I guess, compounded with another story that I had worked on at the Jewish Voice. much less of a phenomenon, but it was something that had happened. It happened on a spring afternoon, a garden apartment in Teaneck, New Jersey. Mothers gathering around the window, looked down at the courtyard of this garden apartment, and saw a bunch of African-American kids were fooling around and playing. Everything was fine. Teenagers. Until one of the mothers who was watching thought she saw a gun. Real gun, not a real gun. It wasn't a child. These were teenagers. These were high school kids. And she called the police. Now, I guess if this had been New York, I don't know, maybe one car would have shown up. Who knows? This was a small town. 4 cars showed up. It's a big deal. It's a small town. Someone saw a gun.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of policemen came out. And and as soon as the police came, of course, the kids scrambled. They ran. One of the kids started climbing up the terraces, which were almost like fire escapes in New York, but these were terraces. And he turned around to look at the policeman and kind of bent over so that one arm was reaching into a pocket. And the policeman also saw the gun. He saw a gun. Ordered the kid down. The kid didn't listen to him. The kid continued to reach and was turning around. The policeman shot him and killed him. 16-year-old boy. When they did the investigation, they found that indeed it was a real live gun and it was fully loaded. And from the angle of the bullet, it was clear the kid was reaching for the gun. Yeah. It was declared a clean shoot. The police officer was exonerated. And there were lots of stories. Obviously, people were very upset about. I mean, it's a terribly upsetting story. It's a frightening story. Yeah. And it was not a story for the Jewish Voice and Opinion. It was a story for the regular newspapers. It wasn't something that I was going to be writing about. There was no Jewish angle in the story. However, one of my very, very good advertisers knew the policeman who had shot the young man, shot the teenager. And he told me that his friend was really suffering. Would I interview him? And I looked at my advertiser and I said, it's not my story. He said, yeah, but you do a good job interviewing. You'll make him feel good. Interview him. He's a good advertiser. I was about to say no. Okay, I'll interview him. The young man, the policeman, the kid who was killed was 16. And this guy was probably in his early 20s. I mean, there wasn't that many years separating them.
Yeah.
Came in, his hands were still shaking. He was obviously traumatized. And we talked, and he was well aware that he had been exonerated. He was well aware that it had been declared a clean shoot. There were many people who said to him, listen, God alone knows how many other people you might have saved. What was he going to do with the gun? But the policeman looked at me and he said, at the end of the day, I still killed a 16-year-old. And when I try to wrap my head around that, and I try to think what I would do differently next time, I come up blank.
Yeah.
How can I continue doing this? And he didn't. And I remember when I did write about it, I didn't write about it as a story. I wrote about it, what my feelings were. It was that if we want to talk about a victim, obviously the 16-year-old, his family will never be the same again. Sure. There is a hole that will be there forever. You wouldn't want to fill it. There's no way to fill it because it's unfillable. But this policeman was not the villain. Maybe the villain is who gives a 16-year-old access to a fully loaded gun. I mean, maybe that's who we find the villain is.
Yeah.
But I began to think a great deal about what this policeman had suffered. And that worked its way into Blurred Vision as well.
Wow.
About post-traumatic stress that can affect our first responders.
That's fascinating.
So that's in the book as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it sounds like you've got a wealth of information to fall back upon for for research and to fill out a series. Do you know how many books you want to write in the
There are
series?
going to be four.
Okay.
There are four books in the series, two of them written. This first one, the second one is written and it's been accepted. The Red Adept Publishing is the publisher and they have it. I'm pretty well almost finished with the third one, and I guess then we start on number four. I know what it's going to do. I mean, I have a whole lot of stuff that I do want to write about, that I've wanted to write about. I don't know if you're familiar with the tremendous, terrific writer, Cynthia Ozick. She's a wonderful, wonderful novelist and essayist. Yes, brilliant
Oh, okay.
lady. She's now 97, I think, working on her 25th novel or more. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant lady.
Wow.
Terrific lady. And when I had interviewed her, and she had told me that she had read some of the articles that I wrote on this, and she really encouraged me to write about it. And I said, if I feel like writing about it, writing another nonfiction book about it. I don't know if I feel like doing it. He said, no, 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 do it through fiction, explore it through fiction. I said, oh. So that's what I did.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I have a to wrap things up here. I have a would you rather question, which I there must have been something to this because I thought at the time I was like, well, this is an interesting question when I came upon it, and then after hearing everything with our discussion, it made this question very interesting, and you'll see what my point is here in just a second here. Okay, so Susan, would you rather have a reader hate your protagonist or fall in love with your villain?
Anybody who fell in love with my villain, I'd want to take his temperature. I would find him, I would like him to be intrigued by my villain.
Yeah,
I'd like him to want to be curious enough about my villain to find out, where did he come from? He also had parents. He also had some kind of a community. I don't think you could fall in love with him, but I think it might be very important. I would love a reader to want to know what formed someone like that. We talk about nature and nurture. Certainly someone who's talented. They are talented. They
yeah,
are able to read people. Why did they use that talent to do this? I've often felt, um, I like most Jewish journalists, we've done work over the years on the Holocaust, interviewed Holocaust survivors, interviewed sometimes children of Nazis, people who were children who grew up, their parents were Nazis and they're not, and what happened. I have often felt that we sometimes spend a lot of our time looking at the wrong things. I will never understand people who cheer as other people are suffering. I mean, I don't
yeah.
understand it. I don't,
Hmm.
most of us, I think decent people just naturally want to, just like you just did, you want to turn your head away. There's a flinch. I
Yeah,
don't want to watch anybody suffering. I understand fear. Oh my God, this is terrible, but I'm afraid to do anything. If I do it, they're going to go after my kids. They're going to come after me. What's happening there on the street is terrible, but I don't have the power to do anything. I'm I can't do anything. And I think those are things, I don't, the person who just watches or the person who's afraid, but there always are those people who stand up.
hmm,
There always are those people who say, nope, not going to sit here and let that happen. I'm going to step forward. I'm going to take someone. I know the Nazis are chasing him. I know if I get caught, I'm going to get killed. I'm going to hide that person. Come here. I'm going to put you in my barn. Somehow or other, we're going to get through it. I'm going to stand up to someone who's being bullied. I know I'm going to get smacked in the nose. I'm going to get hurt, but I'm not going to let somebody smaller I'm not going to do it.
yeah.
I wish we could study what how that person is raised. I wish we could learn more about what there is about the person who says, I'm going to step up to the plate and do that. I think that would be where it would be wonderful if we could put our efforts into that.
Yeah, I agree.
I
That's
didn't
a good
really answer your question, but I told you about some of mine.
That works though. So I got the idea of where you're going with it, so that works. So. Well, this has been informative and a whole lot of fun. Susan, where can people find and follow you for more information?
They can go to, I'm on Facebook, Susan Rosenbluth. They can go to the Jewish Voice and Opinion because I put stuff there. I'm at Susan Rosenbluth, author. I think you can find it on Instagram, although I won't swear to it. You can certainly find the book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and I think it's on at Walmart. And the publisher is Red Adept Publishing. You can get it there. I hope you'll read it. I hope you'll leave a review, and I'd love to continue the conversation with people like Jason, because I think those kinds of conversations on those big ideas are really what we need to have.
Absolutely. I agree. Yep. And I want to make sure and give a big shout out to our mutual friend, Gary Morgenstein.
Yay!
Put us together. So thank you so much,
Gary is talking about going after the big ideas, right?
Yes.
Gary is a playwright. Gary is a playwright who never found a big idea he was afraid of.
Wonderful. It has been a blast. It's been my privilege to have you here, and I'm so excited. And ladies and gentlemen, of course, as you know, this is not the end. Next week, Susan will be back with a sample from Blurred Vision. Until then, take care, everybody.
Thank you.